Sorry, I'm literally trying to type out right now. Somebody was like, "Did you watch Solar Opposites?" I was like, "You should watch Invincible instead."
Yeah,
It's
I'm actually watching Solar Opposites right now. I
it's
do like
fine.
the show. Yeah.
It's watered down Rick and Morty, which is
Hmm.
fine. It just isn't as good as Rick and Morty or Invincible. Which
Yeah.
now I was just saying I can't think of anything that's as brutal animation wise as the ending scene of episode 1 of Invincible. And
Hmm.
then I started thinking about some of the Rick and Morty stuff, like when he's a pickle and he's murdering all the rats in the sewer. That's pretty bad too.
Yeah.
But I suppose it'd be smart if we kick this off with a little intro. So if you don't know us, we're the Chumpcast. We have a weekly podcast, and we thought we'd expand a little bit and do weekly or single episode recaps of Invincible. So the goal is by the end of this weekend to be caught up through episode 4. We'll do a single short video for each episode because we want people to be able to take this in at their own speed. That way we're not just going like 4 episodes through, and if you're not caught up, you're screwed. So, all right, gentlemen.
Episode 1.
First glance impressions. Mark.
I freaking loved it. And me as a comic book reader and not reading this comic book, I felt shitty as hell watching this. I'm like, what am I missing out on? But this is just one book I haven't gotten to. Just like The Walking Dead from Robert Kirkman. I have not finished the Walking Dead comic. But that's a mission. And what'd you say? There's 150 issues of this comic book wise.
140 something, I think.
So
but they're easy reads. They're not heavy on the exposition, and it's like it keeps you in. I'm actually rereading it right now. I'm about 20 issues in. I read it years ago, and I've been waiting for this episode, this series to drop on Amazon forever because they've been talking about it forever. And once I saw the voice cast, I was like, God damn, they're gonna knock this out of the park.
The voice cast is insane. It's every scene, especially I like watching on Amazon Prime because it shows you who's talking in that
the X-ray stuff, dude. That's incredible. Every other streaming service needs to figure out a way to do this because it's so cool when you hear a voice to just hit the button and it shows you the entire cast in the scene.
Exactly. And there were so many names, and I'm just like, oh, this guy's in it. Oh, this guy's in it. And then it just the list kept going bigger and bigger with the more superheroes that they showed, which was awesome.
You open on a scene with a random security guard guy who is essentially a throwaway character, and he will return later on in the series, but he's essentially a throwaway, and it's John fucking Hamm's voice.
Not a throwaway actor.
That's it's the best thing ever because I was watching it on my computer and I used my mouse to like just set it up and press play, and I just saw John Hamm, and I was like, okay, this show's gonna be amazing. Let's go.
Absolutely. So in the first episode alone, you've got Lauren Cohan from The Walking Dead, Mahershala Ali, Oscar winner. Obviously, our main character is J.K. Simmons, another Oscar winner. Stephen Yeun, who could win an Oscar this year. Sandra Oh is Mark Grayson's mother. I mean, just ridiculous. Keeps on going. You get Walton Goggins is the main guy pushing the buttons. Jason Mantzoukas, Zachary Quinto. It's insane.
And with the animation, we had one person on Instagram. I was asking people how they felt about the show. And one guy was like, I loved it, but I just didn't think the animation was that great or it was nothing special. I'm like, do you know who's behind the animation? So obviously Robert Kirkman had a say in it alongside Corey Walker is the co-creator with Robert Kirkman on this book. And he basically oversaw all the character designs, just like in the comic. He did the same thing for the show, but they had the animators from the DC universe come in and
it looks like a copy paste from whatever the most recent Superman animated movie was. I don't know, like if you could reach through and choke somebody via Instagram, you probably should.
This is a comic book coming to the screen, basically coming to life on the screen. And you had the animation director was Hae Young Jung, who is most known for Avatar: The Last Airbender. He did Legends of Korra, things like that. So the animation was stacked.
It was also every cityscape scene that they made. Everything was like spot on, spectacular, amazing. Right on. Yeah. Everything was like to scale perfectly as they zoom across, flying away. But like the buildings and the cityscape, how everything was like so large, and they made everything look so detailed. Sometimes I was like, "Is this like not even animation? This looked like a real cityscape." It was like insane. So well done.
And if you're familiar with the comics, the art style is very familiar. It's a little different certainly, and the art style changes as it does in most books. It gets a little more clean as it picks up steam, and basically they'll get more funding, and the artist will focus more on it once you know it's a success. So it does changing a little cleaner as you go along through the issues. So
before we dive further into this episode, just for the listeners that aren't familiar with the comic book, just wanted to give you a little bit of background as the importance of this comic book. This came out in 2003, and like I said, it was co-created by Robert Kirkman. Robert Kirkman, most known for The Walking Dead. He came out with The Walking Dead in 2003 as well. So both of these books came out at the same time, and people were freaking the fuck out. This is an indie comic. Image was blowing the hell up.
Yeah. And
this was literally, I think, a decade after Image was founded and got off the ground running.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was a huge comic book, super important. And what I love about Amazon taking these indie comic books is not being a comic book reader, you don't feel that intimidation getting into this sort of thing. You know, with DC and Marvel, I could see people being intimidated by how much stuff is out there. You know, where do I start, kind of thing. With this, you read a couple trade paperbacks, whatever. This thing came out in 2000s, so you can definitely catch up, and you don't even need to catch up. You can go into this show without knowing anything and have a good ass time, and that's what I love about them adapting these indie series.
I will say, through the first 3 episodes, which all dropped on last Friday, it follows the story of the comics pretty closely. There's a little bit of deviation. I won't get into that for fear of spoiling things, but that said, I mean, the episode itself, the very opening fight scene kind of gives you a very short preview of the style of violence that you're going to have, and like the teamwork with the Guardians of the Globe. They just beat the shit out of the Muller twins. And
yeah,
as the episode goes on, and as you get into deeper episodes, you'll see much more fucked up stuff. I'm thinking the ending of this, which I think we'll spend the majority of our time on. But before we do that, I did want to mention a couple of things. Did you notice the reference to Seance Dog, which is Mark's favorite comic?
Yeah, that was like the Doctor Strange dog, basically.
So in the comics, it's actually Science Dog. And I was like, why would they make that small, dumb change? And then I Googled it and started reading it. And Kirkman was talking about how getting the rights to something, you basically have to sell the rights of Science Dog, which is a real Image comic, to Amazon. And then they kind of own that, and you can't option that anywhere else. So they just made this little itty bitty tweak, which I thought was just a really cool nod to that. I also liked how, well, they've changed Mark's best friend, William. In this case, he's this
is annoying. Every time you say Mark, I always think you're talking about actual Mark.
Do you want me to call him Invincible
Mark
instead?
No, Mark is fine, but Invincible will work too.
It's funny that this show is the reverse dad and son dynamic here in my house.
That's a good point.
Yeah, where Nolan is the dad. Yeah, Mark is the son.
Okay. I didn't think of that, but at one point, William mentions that our main character, Invincible, is a big fan of Omni-Man, which obviously you come to find out why. But he's like, that's basically like rooting for the Yankees. So they're telling you flat out in the beginning, this guy's basically Superman. He's unbeatable.
And is there just like a direct reference to the Justice League for the global gang?
Yeah, but I mean, War Woman. I mean, obviously.
I know an Omni-Man is Superman, but just not officially on that team.
Darkwing, who is Batman, and
there's so many references.
Aquaman is literally the fish dude. Like they have Green Lantern, that chick who turns green. I think I like this show a lot because they put a bunch of different characters, a bunch of different superheroes in the mix right away, and they're just like, this is the world that you're living in. This is they set it up perfectly by having all these different superheroes, so there's always something new coming at you, and they have different teams. I think the different team aspects of the different superhero it's very interesting to me as well.
Smithers, in the comic, did they make Nolan's character look more like J. Jonah Jameson in this series because J.K. Simmons was voicing him?
I mean, that's basically what he looks like in the comics.
Okay.
I mean, it is.
That's hilarious.
If you looked at it, you'd be like, "Fuck, that does look like a jacked J. Jonah Jameson."
Yeah,
like J.K. Simmons when he was training for Justice League.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, they were very, very true to the source material in this, which I greatly appreciate.
They took liberties too. At the end of this, we'll talk about the ending scene, but they took a big liberty in changing it up from the comics.
Okay, interesting. You get the classic, "Hey, sorry, you're an alien. You're going to have superpowers," and then you have the classic scene of Invincible discovering his powers, and I thought it was funny to refer to it as like flying is basically peeing your pants on purpose, which is something that it's a Kirkman-esque line because it's like everybody knows that feeling, but also you have no fucking idea what it's like to try and fly. But also at the end of that scene where he's basically trying to fight Omni-Man for the first time, Omni-Man cracks him right in the chest and probably just damn near killed his son. And you get a glimpse of the sociopathy there because he basically turns it and says, "This is your fault. You're hurt. This is your fault because you wanted to do this. And if you want to do this, you better fucking get used to it." Yeah. Which is some very manipulative shit. From there, though, I think one of the more interesting aspects of this, and they really put it into a short, crisp package here, but finding your superhero name. I feel like that's always something that's explored. It's always kind of a fun ride because how do you choose a name that makes you sound awesome and intimidating without just sounding like a complete douchebag? Like if I flew up and landed next to you and was like, "My name is Invincible," you'd be like, "Get the fuck out of here."
Okay, Invincible, let's see how invincible you are if you're a super villain, you know?
Yeah, except he is kind of invincible.
Yeah, and they play into that really well too. They're like, I like a lot of how shoes. Yeah, they like made fun of them too.
Big shoes to fill.
Leaning into that though, like, so after this we go see Art, who is the costume designer, voiced by Mark Hamill. Very obviously, amazing. I was going to ask you, Mark, if you noticed that, but I should have known better. Of course you did.
Yeah.
So the way that he gets his name is a little bit different here than it is in the comics. I don't want to spoil it, but I just wanted to kind of point out where they diverge a little bit from the source material, just because it's interesting. But in reality, what we're here to talk about is the post-credit scene, which is essentially just Omni-Man murdering the entire Guardians of the Globe.
Brutally.
Aggressively.
Disgustingly.
Red Rush is immediately the Mountain and Vipered, and his head is just exploded. I mean, they do it very slowly as well, which if you know Omni-Man and you know how strong he is, you know that he did that on purpose because he could have just like clapped and it would have been over.
Yeah.
But he wanted him to feel it. There is disdain in Omni-Man for these people. And they always mention that Panda's in the chat and he says no spoilers. Dude,
spoilers at the bottom.
There's a scroll at the bottom. We're spoiling it. Deal with it.
It's been out for a week now. Come on. Let's go.
Yeah, so then he turns to Darkwing and Green Ghost and basically just explodes their heads. There were fish brains everywhere. And then, I mean, Omni-Man kind of leans into taking the beating because I feel as though he knows that he's going to get questioned, and we get our demon detective who shows up later on in the series. But I think the best for me, the best murder was the Immortal, who basically just gets a haircut that's a little too tight. That was fucking vicious. And yeah. I'm curious, since Brick and Mark, I know you didn't read the comic. Mark, you may have heard this was coming. Brick, were you completely caught off guard?
Absolutely. I was blown. And then how you said he leaned into taking some punches so that he could answer those questions and be like, at least not a suspect. It's got me, that almost took a back burner to the rest of the series because I just love where the story's going, but it really threw me for a loop, and I still don't know what the hell is expected or why he even did that at this point. Have you guys? So you've gotten past this point in the?
Oh yeah. I will say in the comics, this probably doesn't happen until like issue 6, between 6 and 8. And in this case, I think that this is brilliant in terms of the showrunner, because they're like, if we don't do this in episode 1, people are going to start talking about the comics and it will get spoiled immediately. We have to get this out of the way. You have to leave some doubt. They don't expound on it at all. They're just like, here's the end scene. The Guardians of the Globe are dead. See you next episode.
Yeah, it was the absolute best. It was an attention grabber. It locked me in for the next 2 episodes. I was like, all right, here we go.
So did it change that? Did that scene change the way that you saw what you were expecting from this series?
I mean, I would hope so, because that's what they were doing this on purpose when they created this first episode, the pilot. People were probably wondering up until those last 60 seconds or however long that scene lasted, like, why is this mature? Why are people saying this is going to be the animated The Boys, like things like that? But then when that shit happened, I guarantee you the majority of the audience were freaking out, and they're just, yeah, okay, this is what we're going to get. And what I really loved about what they did is, did you guys notice there was no music playing? And in The Dark Knight Rises, that's it. Obviously, what I thought of is like the Bane fight. How Nolan loves fucking having something at all times in the background playing. But the fact that he chose not to have any sound, no score in the background while this brutal scene was happening, I thought that was great to that movie. And the fact that they did this in this scene, it just made it so much more brutal without any background noise.
Shout out to the Foley artists. So if you don't know, Foley artists basically are sound people who replicate weird sounds that you wouldn't expect to hear. So like if you hear horses galloping in a cartoon, there was somebody in there with like a set of coconuts making them clap. And I don't know how you discern what an exploding head sounds like, but I'm pretty sure that they captured it perfectly.
Sharpen those senses for sure, because they did have a lot of music in the background playing, and they did do this perfectly because the scene was so graphic. Cutting the music really made you focus in on what you were explaining. Happening. Yeah, because it is such a shock. It was a mic drop. It was like, holy shit, this thing just got flipped on its head real quick. What's going on?
All right, Mark. I think we're going to wrap this up. I'm going to give you a chance to give me your final thoughts and what did you think was going to happen after you watched this first episode?
Without knowing anything about the comic books, I obviously knew it was going to take a really dark turn. I did not expect it to take this much of a dark turn. And holy shit. I would just say, obviously, this is for mature audiences, but even like I said before, even if you're not into comics, and knowing that this is a comic book shouldn't hold you back. Go into this. It's like The Boys, and you don't have to know anything about this universe. Just go into it and have a great time. It's going to be brutal. It's going to be even more gory. And this is going to be a must see this year, I think, especially animation wise, but I'm just going to put it into the overall show category, series category. Amazon is doing a great job with this shit.
Amazon needed a show. Needed a show. They were barren for a bit, but this is bringing them back for sure on the map of must see TV. Yeah, dude, it gives you, I think, because they had those familiar characters, as in they just copied the Justice League, you kind of already feel like you already know what's going on, more or less. You know what this universe is kind of about. But like you said, they flip it on their head. Must watch. Check it out for sure.
I've been saying for a while we were in kind of a rut as far as TV shows go. Resident Alien was for a long time, which the finale starts in about 10 minutes. Was my favorite show on TV, and this immediately lapped Resident Alien. This is killer. I love it so much. As somebody who loved the comic, I can't say enough about it. I hope they can keep this up. Obviously, we've only seen 3 episodes, so the good thing is, if people react positively to this, we can get a lot more seasons of it. And maybe Kirkman is itching to write new storylines. I don't know. We'll see. So I think that's probably about enough for us on this. Thanks for tuning in. Like I said, we're going to try and get caught up through episode 4, which will be by the end of this weekend. We also, on our Patreon, do a weekly Falcon Winter Soldier recap if you're interested in that, and we'll probably shift that as Disney moves to like their Loki series, etc. Like I said, you can find us at the Chunkcast on all social media. You can call or text us if you have a question for the podcast at 847-920-6107, and check out our YouTube channel for episode 2 coming very soon.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Jumps out, motherfucker.